Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Scares That Shaped Us, a podcast about horror writers and the stories that made them. I'm your host, Matthew Jackson, and I just saw Weapons. I just literally half an hour ago got back from an advanced screening of Zach Kreger's new film, Weapons, which I've heard great things about from people I trust, and they were right. It rules. It is an incredibly tense, incredibly fun, funny, mysterious, atmospheric, gruesome horror film from the director of Barbarian. I don't want to say anything else related to her life, her childhood, her development as a person and a creator, a writer. And I was blown away, and I think you will be too. I think I was maybe a little slow on this interview because it's just something that we had not done on the show before. And I was sort of letting Gretchen lead it where it needed to go. And I wasn't always sure of my footing, but Gretchen was wonderful and gracious. And I think we ended up with a fantastic conversation. And I'm not going to ramble about it anymore. I'm going to take you right over there. So let's head to our interview with Gretchen Felker-Martin. Joining us this week on The Scares That Shaped Us is one of the most celebrated horror authors working right now. You will know her from books like Manhunt and Cuckoo. Her latest novel, Black Flame, is available August 5th. Gretchen Felker-Martin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Matthew.
It's so great to have you. I have been a fan. I was a fan of your online presence before Manhunt came out, but I've been a fan of your prose since Manhunt. And Black Flame is one of those things. The moment I found out what it was about, what you were doing next, it was like, oh, this is absolutely my shit. I'm so excited to read this. But for anyone who may not know yet what your third novel with Tor Nightfire is about, could you give us a little taste of what Black Flame is?
Absolutely. Let me just backtrack a moment and say thank you so much. That's very flattering. So, Black Flame is a novel about a deeply repressed and unwell film archivist working at a conservative film archive in Staten Island in the early 1980s. And she is assigned to work on a recently recovered print of an exploitation movie that had been thought to have been destroyed during the Holocaust. And as she comes to grips with this film, The Baroness, it starts to awaken all the things that she has been ruthlessly repressing in herself, and it starts to bleed into her daily life to the point where she can no longer distinguish what's happening in the film from what's happening in reality around her.
It's so much fun, and I love narratives about cursed movies or legendary lost movies and things like that. Anyway, like Paul Tremblay did it recently with horror movie. Sylvia Moreno Garcia did it with Silver Nitrate. Haley Piper told me she's about to do a version of this, and now I've got
It's in the air for sure.
it absolutely is. And I with that in mind, with it being in the air, I wanted to ask you what you feel the true roots of this story are. Did it start with character? Did it start with the Baroness as a lost film? What was the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I've been obsessed with this conceit for a long time. I grew up on 8 millimeter with Nick Cage and all of these great films. Even, things like Hitchcock's Vertigo
Hmm.
with the the haunted, not haunted painting and memory of this woman, or his film Rebecca, which is all about the absence of a person. And that's really what it's about. It's about an absence functioning as a character, um, sort of exploring the negative space in a person's life. So Ellen, the protagonist of Black Flame, was the thing that came to me first. Was this woman who is living vicariously, not even through film, but through, film as a physical object. The only thing she has in her life is like this laboratory work. Um,
It Ellen is such a fascinating character, and it touches on a lot of different themes of different kinds of repression. I don't know if you mentioned it, but I'll mention, like, it's set in the mid 1980s,
yeah,
which if you were a queer person in the mid 1980s, society was doing its part to help you feel as repressed as possible, of course. Uh,
right.
and
It's
then you
intentionally set right before the break of the AIDS epidemic.
Yes, and then you have this idea of transgressive queer artists working in Europe in the 1930s before all of that transgressive art was seized and destroyed by the Nazis, along with the people who made that art. And it's just all of this stuff coming at you at once, but then it distills down into this remarkable, um, like you said, the idea of you're looking at the absence of, like, the novel is so concerned with who Ellen could have been if she made certain choices at a different point. And you mentioned negative space. I love that that is a very literalized metaphor in this book. Uh, but I want to ask specifically about the Baroness, because the Baroness sounds like the most, like, face melting, crazy exploitation movie that I would love to see in a heartbeat. Um, did you sit down and devise all of the elements of the Baroness separately from the book, or did you just incorporate them as you were going?
I incorporated as I was going. The Baroness is largely based on things like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the films of F.W. Murnau, who actually appears briefly in a flashback chapter or is mentioned. Um, and then the other big inspiration is the sort of match cut trickery black magic movies of the 1910s and 1920s.
Yeah. There's just so much in this book that I we could spend the whole hour just talking about Black Flame. But um as you said, Ellen is an archivist, and she is working on restoring prints of this film and other films. And the process of restoring film is rendered so vividly in this book. It's so tactile and great.
Oh,
Um,
thank you so much.
what was the research process like for you to feel like you were getting that right as Ellen sat down and worked through this stuff literally frame by frame?
Well, I talked to a few archival restorers, which was definitely the single most useful point of research that I came across. I also watched a lot of footage of film being restored, which is such a weird thing to exist. You know, it's sort of like vacuum cleaning while you watch someone repair a vacuum, like, but weirder.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm a huge process girl. I love to watch specialized labor. I love to watch difficult, intricate work. Um, And, often it's really the first thing that jumps out to me about a book is what kind of weird little job are the people in this going to be doing? So I'm very glad to hear that it comes across for you.
Oh, it's wonderful, and I also I love, anytime, especially having to do with preserving film, anytime I can sit down and watch footage of someone just explaining that to me, I'm very happy. Uh, but I also we touched on this briefly, but I wanted to go back to talking about the setting, um, America in 1985, uh, and also, Europe in the 1930s. Um, like no one's surprised that these themes are things we're getting in a Gretchen Felker-Martin novel. Like that's not that you are very much getting the next chapter in Gretchen meditating on queer themes and what it means to be queer through a horror lens, and it's wonderful in that way. Um, and as a person who is not queer, I don't want to put words in your mouth about what your goals and intentions were with it. So I just want to ask you, having written Manhunt and having written Cuckoo, and they have their own ways of looking at all this stuff. What, if anything, were you setting out to say with this book?
Well, Manhunt is really about the frustration of being unable to fight back against people who are trying to kill you. And Cuckoo is about the unique ways that those same systems torture and exploit children. And with Black Flame, I shift the lens to art and artists. And I think that for the past 15 or 20 years, we've been in an especially brutal chapter of the sort of endless proxy war of what is and isn't permissible in popular culture. You see this crop up daily online. You can't have X or so and so in film or books or comics because it'll encourage Y and Z. Um, and people from all sides of the uh, ideological aisle will fight over this pretty much to the death. And inevitably, this all leads to fascism. Once you start controlling expression, it's a very, very short hop and a skip to controlling bodies and then destroying lives. So, really, what I wanted to talk about through this book about archival restoration and repressed desire is censorship. What is staying closeted but self-censorship? You're adopting the morals of the empire in which you live and forcing them on yourself, even at your own, even to great personal cost.
It is so potent, and I think it's more potent because you get that sort of 50-year parallel of the 30s and the 80s, and of course now we have another. Did I say 30-year parallel or 50-year? 50-year
50
parallel,
year
one
parallel.
one way or another, everybody. Um, and now, of course, we have our own, almost 50-year parallel with the 80s and the 2020s, and it's a lot, and it's very heavy, but it is distilled into this wonderfully entertaining, terrifying novel that I really love, and I hope everyone goes and gets it. I also just wanted to ask for fun, since this is a movie about lost films. Do you? I know, like anyone who follows you knows, you are a film fan, you are a film reviewer, you are steeped in this stuff. Do you have a like bucket list? If I could get any lost film back, what would it be? Do you have one?
Oh, man. I know that this isn't an especially controversial answer, but I would do pretty much anything to see Wells's intended cut of the Magnificent Ambersons.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
I feel like that was such a loss for art.
It really was, yeah. If you don't know the story of Orson Welles making his follow-up to Citizen Kane and it getting completely chopped up, You go look into that. It's very sad. Mine, I think, is I used to say London After Midnight, but I feel like it's so played out now, and we know so much about it anyway that I don't know that it could ever deliver on the anticipation that people have built up
Right.
for it. But I think I would absolutely love to see Theda Bara's Cleopatra. Um,
Oh my god, yes.
I mean, any number of Theda Bara's films, because most of them are gone, but the
Right.
Cleopatra, with the amount of money that was spent and the giant sets that they built, which was another thing about the silent era, is they had to just build all that shit, and it was all there, and it really was 50 feet tall Babylonian statues and stuff on screen. I would love to see that, but we are here to talk about a different film today, and we're doing something a little different. Because Gretchen requested a story, and I immediately understood what she was getting at in requesting this story. It is not specifically horror. For the first time on this show, we're going to something that is nominally more fantasy than horror, but we are going to talk about the 1982 adaptation of The Last Unicorn, the animated film written by Peter S. Beagle based on his book and directed by my boys, the Kings of Christmas, Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass. Uh, Gretchen, what made you want to choose The Last Unicorn for this, knowing that it's not a horror story, but I think I know where you're going with this.
It was the first time that I encountered body horror.
Mm,
It was also the first time that I understood dysphoria. I think this is a really potent movie. You know, this was my favorite movie when I was a little kid. I would watch it over and over and over again. I actually wore out our local video store's tape and they just gave it to me, so I had this horrible scratchy grainy version. Um there's this specific scene, and there's a lot of horrifying stuff in this film. You know, there's the harpy attacking and eating Mommy Fortuna. There's Haggard's castle. There's the bull. But the moment that really got me is when the unicorn is transformed into a human. And as soon as she gathers her faculties, the first thing she says is, I can feel this body dying all around me.
hmm It is. I did not experience this movie as a child for whatever reason. It came out a few years before I was born and just sort of bounced around, and I guess I none of us ever picked it up at the video store. No one ever had it at home and wanted to watch it. I found it as an adult when I was dating a woman in my early 20s who it was her favorite film as a child, and so she played it for me. Um and I was very charmed by it, but it wasn't until I rewatched it for this show, and this is one of the great things about this show is, like, I'm trying to think about why would this matter to Gretchen Felker-Martin? And obviously, yeah, there's creepy visuals galore in this movie. It's a beautifully done fantasy with lots of dark elements in it, but I did immediately think like, "Oh, right, she transforms, and then she
Right,
has to reckon with the consequences of that transformation, and she has to deal with what it feels like to be in the wrong body, and it's a very, very heavy movie. It's very like it is, and we're gonna spoil The Last Unicorn, everybody, because it's from 1982. If you haven't watched it yet, it's streaming on Amazon right now. Go pause the podcast, watch it, come back. It's a short movie.
yeah,
Um,
you will not regret spending 90 minutes on this. I don't even know if
abso
it's full 90 minutes.
It's like 87. Yeah, it's a very tight film, but like it is such a it is such an honest depiction of the raw emotions that the last unicorn has to go through in a way that a lot of kids movies especially now, but definitely like in the 1980s, just weren't handling. Like, not that kids movies can't have big emotional themes, but this is a movie about like regret and
Yeah,
loss, and what what would you sacrifice to reclaim what you the to reclaim the person you feel you truly are.
yeah,
And it's Oh my gosh, it's a lot for this cartoon from 1982. Um, so you mentioned, like, wearing this tape out. Um, did it did it occur when did it first occur to you that it was a body horror story?
I would say probably not until I got into Carpenter and Cronenberg in college. I had seen The Thing as a teenager, and that was a time in my life when I really couldn't do too much horror. It was just sort of too raw for me. But in my early 20s, I started to really, really dig into the genre. And then revisiting The Last Unicorn, I was like, oh, holy shit. This is like talking about the same things in a completely different visual language.
Yeah, it really does fit into that continuum of, like, you can watch something like The Fly and then watch The Last Unicorn and be like, "Oh, wow, okay. We're kind of delving into the same territory here," or especially something more recent Cronenbergian like Crimes of the Future. I feel
Right.
like would be a really, really interesting double feature with The Last Unicorn, which sounds crazy if you haven't thought about it like Gretchen clearly has, and like I'm beginning to think about it now, but it really is there. It is like, yes, the harpy attack is terrifying, but like what's more unsettling on an emotional level is that moment when Molly, the woman who has decided to accompany Schmendrick and the Last Unicorn on their journey to find the Red Bull, is weeping and telling Schmendrick, like, you're killing her.
Yeah.
You understand? Like, you can't do this to a unicorn. This isn't meant for them. And even at the end of the film, after she has transformed back into a unicorn, she tells Schmendrick, like, I'll never be like the other unicorns again.
Right. She's
I'll always be a little different.
she's lost herself in regaining her people.
So I don't know how personal we want to get here. So if I'm
Go
going
ahead.
into going into territory you don't like, you just tell me and we'll move on. But like, um, how much did The Last Unicorn as a piece of fiction work within your journey as a trans person? If it did at all, was it a factor for you?
I think it was a huge part of it for me. I used to, like I said, compulsively rewatch it. And that was not just when I was 8 or 9. That kept up until I was 14, 15. The things that she goes through in that movie are very much things that I was going through. Um, there are all these scenes where she's yearning to return to her real form, and as a kid, I would lie in bed and I would pray to wake up in a different body. And I think just seeing someone who is in so much pain just from existing, it was huge for me. I didn't have the words for who or what I was, but I had all the emotions.
It's so I'd forgotten how much of this film focuses on, and I mean we're talking about repression as relates to Black Flame, but like, so a huge chunk of this narrative is built on her being trapped in a woman's body, a human woman's body. She
Right.
can't she can't tell anyone that she's a unicorn, because if she tells anyone, then King Haggard, voiced by the great Christopher Lee, will want to drive her into the sea to be part of the sort of secret unicorn menagerie that he has built. Which we will talk about King Haggard in a second, because
Yeah.
fascism, boy. Um, but she spends all this time debating, like, the compromise of her life. Like, well, I'm not a unicorn anymore, but this prince over here is nice to me. I guess I could just marry this nice person who seems to care about me and live out the rest of my life as a human woman instead of being a unicorn, but that feels weird. And Molly is even telling her, like, just give him a chance. He's a nice boy. You'll come around. You'll come around. And like, that is so relevant to what Ellen goes through in Black Flame,
Absolutely.
which I can't
Absolutely.
get into. I can't get into too many spoilers, but Ellen is also like living in this world where she is attempting to deny her nature as a gay woman, and attempt to assimilate basically, and make her mother happy, and do all these things that she feels like she's supposed to do. Um, and I mean that it comes up in Cuckoo, it comes up in Manhunt. It's all that sort of, and it's relayed in such an entertaining package because this is still a like fun fantasy movie, and Manhunt is a fun horror novel, and Cuckoo is a fun horror novel. Um, like this is a thing that I talk to guests a lot about on this show, and this is something you've been thinking about your whole life in relation to this story. Um, how do you balance dealing with repression and fascism and that sort of thing, and the inherent in Black Flame, and then of course the inherent violence of society against trans people and Manhunt, and things like that, while still trying to generate something that has a drive, that has a story that's really fun for people to read. This is a very bland question, I'm realizing as I ask it.
Let me see if I can give it a good answer.
Okay.
I think that if you sit and produce work that you believe in as emotionally honest a manner as you can find, that kind of thematic material emerges naturally. You don't have to structure a story around, lessons.
Yeah.
My fiction may be politically blunt, and it might make it very clear what I think about things, but I try never to be didactic. I don't
Mhm.
ever want the reader to feel like they're reading a textbook or being lectured. I want them to feel what I'm feeling when I commit this scene to paper, or feel their own version of it.
Do you think, like all the themes we just talked about with regard to Black Flame and what you were hoping to talk about through the lens of that story, is that stuff that's laid out in your head before you're writing, or are you plot first, theme later?
I would say I typically have a good handle on what themes will be relevant to whatever story I'm going to write, but the story does come first.
Mhm. Um, so let's talk a little bit about uh the more overt horror elements in this story, because they are a lot of fun. I especially love the laughing skull that guards the clock, that is played voiced by the great Rene Auberjonois from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Uh that I've talked about this a lot on the show. I was not allowed near horror stories as a kid. So, very often the closest thing I had to a horror story growing up was some scary part of an animated movie. I remember very specifically I had a cousin who would not watch Fern Gully: The Last Rainforest because he was afraid of Hexus, the giant pollution monster. Um, I remember Anastasia being in the way that Rasputin is
Right.
basically just a zombie who keeps falling apart on screen, as being a particularly eye-opening moment. But that skull, I would have been going to bed thinking about that laughing drunken skull for like 3 months if I had seen this movie when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. It's just so beautiful.
Oh, it's a perfect little fantasy touch. It's the kind of thing that you might encounter in sort of a less serious Conan story.
Oh yeah.
Um, and something I love about the movie is that it's so concerned with questions of mortality. The skull is dead, but it still craves sensation. King Haggard feels nothing but depression, but he still craves ownership over the unicorns. Mommy Fortuna knows that the harpy is going to kill her, but she also knows that the longer she keeps the harpy, the deeper her imprint on history will be, because the harpy is immortal.
That is such a great dark moment very early in the film of this charlatan carnival magician who casts glamours on on animals to make them look like mythical beasts, and then realizing that the two mythical creatures she managed to actually capture, a unicorn and a harpy. The unicorn is going to escape, and the harpy is going to kill her. And she has that moment of like, my death will be a glorious death.
Yeah,
And then the harpy just descends, and that is so metal for
it really is.
a thing this targeted. Like Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass are the people who did, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and they are here making this film, and they would later go on and do Thundercats, or maybe around the same time they were producing Thundercats. So like
Yeah,
they knew from family entertainment, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I've written about this a little before, but the the early Rankin Bass holiday special stuff, um, which a lot of it was written or co-written by a guy named Romeo Muller, who is believed now to have been a gay man. He was a lifelong bachelor, and living in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
right.
And he wrote so many stories about outsiders, about people who do not fit in the established norm of their society. Like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is that.
Right.
And there's an elf who doesn't want to be an elf, wants to be a dentist.
Yeah.
Uh, and it goes on and on and on throughout those films where you have like it's people have taken these on as like, oh, these characters, we will claim these characters as queer characters because they are outsiders in a rigidly structured society. And then they made The Last Unicorn, which is about a unicorn who is trying to find her place in the world, and a magician who wants to be a real magician but is really just a guy who does card tricks and has to find his power along the way. And I'm just musing in my head now about how we're we just had another story this week come out about Pixar dropping queer characters and stuff from their latest
Right.
animated film, and I'm like, but it's been there the whole time.
Right. You
Been
know,
there the whole
this,
time.
I mean, when you think about like the seminal works that propelled animation to modern greatness, so many of these are based on fairy tales that were first written down by gay men.
Mhm.
You know, a work that The Last Unicorn is really strongly in conversation with is Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid.
Mm. Yeah.
There's those wonderful descriptions of her first sensations on land when she talks about how walking is feels like she's stepping on knives. She has to enter this body that isn't hers in order to go and find a man. I mean, Hans Christian Andersen is it's not even a like, oh, maybe case. You know, this is a guy who is like passing out drunk on Charles Dickens' lawn. And
Mhm. It's just so, like, do you guys like Anna, the Snow Queen from, or Elsa the Snow Queen from Frozen? Hey,
right.
go watch The Last Unicorn and you'll get it even more explicitly in some ways. Um which I want to double back and talk about King Haggard, because you mentioned it before, and it is such a it is one of the most potent villain motivations I've ever encountered in like a children's animated fantasy film, because so many of them are just like, well, I hate that guy, so I want to ruin his life, or I want all the power.
Right.
King Haggard doesn't is not out to ruin anybody's life, any human life anyway. Like, he doesn't care. The people show up at his castle and he's like, "Oh yeah, come in, whatever." He's not like a mad conqueror who's trying to take over the entire world of this fantasy. He just wants unicorns,
He wants to
and
be happy.
he wants to be happy, and he says that seeing unicorns is the only thing that makes him happy. And his solution is, I will herd every single unicorn into the sea below my tower, and I can anytime I want look down there and see all of the unicorns, and that's what makes me happy.
It's very easy to see the parallels between the unicorn herself and Haggard, and how they have this deep need to be close to the other unicorns, to
Mhm.
see them, to return to them in some way, and Haggard has no way forward, is the difference.
Yeah.
He's trapped in this role and this life and this body. He's old, his life is almost over, but none of the things in it mean anything to him. He has no retainers, he has no court. He really doesn't have a kingdom. He just has this crumbling old castle on the edge of the sea where he stares at this thing that it's not too much of a jump to think that he wishes he was.
Yeah. I mean, that is not an angle that I had thought of, in between, like, last night and now, but I mean, it is like that there is such profound suffering in him as a character, and it is linked to, like, wish I could be that beautiful.
Right.
Wish I could be that graceful. I don't. Yeah, oh my gosh. We are breaking the last unicorn wide open, and it's wonderful, and it makes me so happy. So, I want to talk about this story as it relates to just the act of writing for you. Has there ever been a moment where you have sat down and gone like, this is very deliberately last unicorn coded? Or
Yeah,
it like
absolutely.
yeah?
Yeah. Um, there was a story that I wrote for Monoceros, which was a zine of unicorn stories a
Mm,
couple of years ago, called You Only Come to Girls. And it's about this young boy's experience seeing a unicorn for the first time, on the same day that he's violently assaulted by the other pages at court. And that's very much me processing my feelings about childhood and the last unicorn, and growing up as a boy. Um, but I think something like this that's so close to the root of why I love art is just inevitably in everything that I touch. You know, I write about people who reflect these people from Peter S. Beagle's work because that was one of the first things to really deeply move me.
mhm. I have to say, like, as someone who did not experience it as a child and sort of casually experienced it in my 20s and then sat down last night to really watch it and really dig in, like, it is a profound film, and I wish it's sort of half forgotten now. It's very weird. You have people who know it from childhood who absolutely adore it and will shout about it from the rooftops, and then it just sort of fades into the background with everyone else, which is a shame. Everyone should go watch The Last Unicorn. It's beautiful.
And read it. The
Oh, I
book
was
is
yeah, I was about to ask about what's
the
your
book
thoughts
is
on the
ex
book.
the book is exquisite.
Um, I know from following you online, speaking of Peter S. Beagle and fantasy writing, that oh, there's a kitty. Everybody,
This is Lenny.
hi Lenny. A kitty has invaded the podcast. We are a very pet friendly podcast, so I'm
Yeah,
happy
he
to
usually
see.
appears, anytime I do a guest spot on anything, and he's usually much more popular than me, so
Well, my dogs are not in here to freak out upon seeing a cat right now, but if they were, they would be very curious. Um, you have mentioned recently that you are in your spare time, which is and always a funny thing for me when I know a writer has an output like you, and then they're like, in my spare time, I'm also. But you've said you're working on a fantasy novel.
yes.
Um, is it something that you're just going to unleash on your Patreon for the foreseeable future? Is it something you ever see like collecting and publishing?
I would love to eventually publish it. Um, I've had to take a hiatus for the past 3 months, but I'm really looking forward to getting back to it. I'm about to turn in my 4th novel, and that's going to give me a little bit of me time.
What for those who don't know, because you can go like read some of this on your Patreon, right?
Right.
So you can go to Gretchen's Patreon and subscribe. I'm gonna go do it because I want to read this thing now. What is the fantasy novel in progress that you're working on over there?
So the novel is called The Sign of the Dragonfly, and it's a secondary world fantasy about this civilization that's sort of, I would say, Southeast Asian Islamic Golden Age, and it's about witchcraft and uh, gender roles and all of the heroic violence. It's basically just everything that I want to get out of my system into fantasy. It's been so long since I've written fantasy.
I'm very excited to go check this out. So you mentioned the fourth novel. I don't know if you can say anything at all, but if you can, what can you say?
I can say a little bit. So the fourth novel is called Chimera, and it is about a deeply, deeply dysfunctional, badly decayed family of shapeshifters who can take on the form of any animal they've eaten. And it's about sort of their last year as an intact functioning unit.
That sounds great. I'm so ready for that. Before we let you go though, I did want to go back to something that I think is very important, and that you obviously also think is very important. Is you were talking before when we were discussing Black Flame about uh, the curtailing of expression as a step on the road to fascism,
Right.
which is anyone who's read like any book about Nazi Germany should know that like that is the thing. That is literally that was part of their game plan. We all know this,
Right.
and yet we still have the conversation of the "are sex scenes really necessary?" people still come out every couple of weeks on the internet like clockwork, and I uh I find myself like you are very outspoken on this particular topic, and I find myself gravitating to that and going, yeah, what Gretchen said, because it especially irks me when it comes to something like horror, when
Yeah.
people are upset that a horror novel was upsetting,
I get
and
that a lot.
I'm so confused by that. I'm like, no, that's part of it. That's in there. That's like saying you're mad that coffee has caffeine in it.
Right. I'm so angry that I bit down on this ghost pepper and now my mouth burns.
It's so strange, and it is, a lot of it is, it's just people throwing comments out on the internet, but in this particular time, in this particular place, I feel like it's all the more necessary to like crack down on that and like tell people like, hey, read whatever you want, watch whatever you want, but like you can't be mad at someone for expressing themselves in an authentic way. Um, I talked when Haley Piper was here. We talked a lot about the importance of sincerity in
Oh, I
speculative
love
fiction.
Haley.
Yeah, Haley's amazing. Um, Haley's new book is also great. Everybody, go
It
pre-order it.
really, really is.
Go get a Game in Yellow. It's fantastic. Um, we talked about the importance of sincerity and in speculative fiction, and you've touched on it a little too. Here is like if you're writing something that you believe in and not winking and nodding and going, oh, I know this is very, very silly, but I'm just going to have my fun. Um, then people follow that. And I think it's equally important. I want to get your thoughts on this. I think it's equally important to try to snuff out those notes of pearl clutching, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that how can you expect a reader to buy into something that you don't buy into? Sincerity is the most important element of any story. And you can tell great sardonic stories, and you can tell great stories that deconstruct the genres that they're engaging with. But those are sincere stories in their own way, typically. What you can't do, in my opinion, is tell a story that is trivial to you,
Mm.
that you think doesn't really mean anything and is of little consequence. I think when it comes to people approaching sex in fiction or transgression in fiction in that way, what they're really doing is they're trying to make the sincerity of a piece of work a weakness, and they're trying to insulate themselves from the vulnerability that that sincerity represents. So they might look at a sex scene and say, "Oh, this is so cringe and embarrassing. Who thinks like this? Who writes like this?" And what they're really saying is like, "Not me. I don't do those things. I don't think those things. I don't want those things." And of course, what this means in every single situation is that they are concealing some desire.
Yeah. It's always the quiet ones. Which is a cliche because it's true. Which is why, like, sincerity is very important, but curiosity is also so important because
Yes.
as a kid who did not like, look, I grew up in Central Texas, going to a Southern Baptist church in the 1980s and 1990s, and I didn't watch horror films. I didn't know any gay people. It was not the most open of worlds, but like something about those worlds was always sort of calling to me. And I'm so glad that I like gave into that calling and found this whole other world of all these amazing people and places and stories. Because if I hadn't, yeah, I'd just be the guy going like, "Oh, really? You think that's oh no, that's not scary. Horror movies don't scare me." I'm like, "Okay, dude, good, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it sounds
go."
like a fucking shitty way to live. Enjoy.
It truly does. Um, if you want a great way to live, everyone, go get Black Flame. It is available August 5th from Tor Nightfire. Gretchen, before we let you go, could you let people know where they can find you online?
Absolutely. So I'm on Blue Sky under my own name, um, with the handle Scumbelievable. And I have a Patreon under my own name where I publish all of my film reviews as well as occasional original fiction.
Our guest has been Gretchen Felker-Martin. Gretchen, thank you so much. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
Oh, pleasure's all mine, Matthew. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks once again to Gretchen Felker-Martin for being on the show. Black Flame is available now wherever books are sold. It came out yesterday. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, so go pick it up. It is my favorite Gretchen Felker-Martin book so far. It's terrific. And yeah, go find Gretchen. Gretchen is super fun to follow online. Her Patreon is amazing. She does all kinds of cool stuff that isn't writing novels out there on the web. So be sure you are following her. And you should also be sure that you are following us. The best way to do that is to find us on Blue Sky. We are at scareshapedus.bsky.social over there. That is where you will find new guest announcements, updates, new episodes, giveaways whenever we do giveaways. Most of our major social communication goes through Blue Sky, so make sure you're following us over there. We're also the Scares That Shaped Us on Facebook. We're also the Scares That Shaped Us on YouTube. If that is how you prefer to listen to your podcast, head over there, like, subscribe. You can also email us if you have anything that you'd like me to know about or like me to talk about on air, any questions. I would love to get kind of a mailbag started with listener mail if that's something that y'all are interested in. So, scares that shaped us podcast at gmail.com. Drop me a line anytime. We appreciate it. We also appreciate all the support from everyone who shares the show when new episodes come out. If you like the show, please tell your friends. We very much appreciate that. Shares on social media, posting about it, getting the word out about what we have going on over here. And of course, if you like the show, please head over to the podcast catcher of your choice, whatever app you use to listen to the show, and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us get more exposure on those apps, helps us get featured, helps us get more listeners, which helps us keep the show going. And as I have said over and over again, I will do this thing forever if y'all let me. So we appreciate any support that you can offer. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming up for y'all over the next few weeks, starting with our episode next week. It is our first ever double guest episode. We will have Christopher Golden and Brian Keene, both legendary horror authors in their own right. They have put their heads together and delivered an incredible anthology called The End of the World as We Know It, New Tales of Stephen King's The Stand, featuring 36 amazing writers writing short fiction set in the world of The Stand. We're going to talk to them all about putting that anthology together, and we are going to dive deep on The Stand. Possibly my favorite book of all time, definitely Chris and Brian's favorite book of all time. It's a really fun conversation for Stephen King superfans and newcomers alike. Again, that will come out August 13th at noon Central. Hope you join us then. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I'm Matthew Jackson, and this is The Scares That Shaped Us.